Well, good morning. Welcome to Vive. We are beginning our new series called Coming Home, and it's just cool to see what God's done over the last 5 years. And over the last 5 years, we have seen literally hundreds. We've lost count, but hundreds of people that have found their way back to God. People who have began a relationship with Him, and we've been able to be a part of that as a church, and it's very exciting. And many of you, that's your story. You know, there's just so many of you that have started that journey back to God. Some of you, maybe you never went to church at all. There are quite a few of you that came here to Vive, and you're like, okay, maybe I could do this, you know. And in that process, something happened, something changed in your life. Some of you, maybe you drifted away from God. You went to church as a kid and just got away from Him, but you came back to Him. And it's just exciting to be a part of that as a church. And over the last 5 years, and actually really longer than that, over the years as a pastor, as I've watched people begin a relationship with God, start in that journey with Him, I've noticed something. There's a common denominator in everybody's story. And the common denominator is this, that there are awakenings that happen. There are things that awaken in us. There's these realizations that we have. And over the next 5 weeks, we're going to talk about these different awakenings that happen. It's a journey that we're on. And there are different awakenings that we experience. One of those awakenings that we're going to talk about today is the awakening to longings. That desire, that thing in us that says, there's got to be more than this, right? We've all, maybe you've even said those words. I know I have many times. There's got to be more than this. And it's those longings that we have. This is what we're going to look at today, and look at a story that Jesus told. But it's those longings that, if we're not careful, they can lead us away from God, or they can lead us to Him. My story, just like your story, at a certain point in my life, I had that question. I was like, there's got to be more to life than this, than just living at home, doing what mom and dad say, and living by the rules. And there's got to be more. And so we branch out and we try things, These longings, that desire to want to experience more is so universal. It's really found in everything. All of our stories that are written, all of our movies that are made that we watch and we love, that's the central theme. There's got to be more. There's got to be more to this life. All of the art that's done, all of the music, we see it everywhere in songs like, if you're an old guy like me, you can't always get what you want, right? Or maybe a little U2. Any U2 fans? I still haven't found what I'm looking for, right? I mean, we see it everywhere. It's universal. It's all around us. And we know what it's like. We know what it's like to have longings that have gone unfulfilled. We know what it's like to end up in a place that we never really intended to go to or be there. And maybe right now you're in that situation. Maybe right now, as you ponder life, you find yourself thinking, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to this. And see, that first awakening, that's the first process, the first step in the process. As we come home, as something changes in our hearts, we realize there are these longings that we have, that there's got to be more to life than this. And sometimes the things that drew us away from God is the same longing that draws us back to Him. I want to look at 3 longings this morning, if you want to hang with me. And these are things that every one of us has. We have these longings in us. God wired us with these longings. It's actually, I believe it's part of our condition because of the fall, because of sin, because of our sinful world. And it's something that happened to us, in us, but it's hardwired into us for God's purpose. And the first longing is this: we all have a longing to be loved, right? I mean, there's nobody sitting here this morning. There's nobody that's breathing air this morning in this world that doesn't have this longing. We all have this universal longing to be loved. God put it there. It's a desire that we have. And it's that longing to be loved that keeps drawing us back into relationships. Some of you have gone through some painful experiences. You've been hurt deeply. And maybe you even whispered, you said, I will never do that again. But you find yourself being drawn back in because there's a longing inside of your heart that you cannot escape. It's a longing to be loved. You get stabbed in the back and you say, I'll never trust people again. But you find yourself stepping out one more time and trusting. Why? Why do you think it is? I mean, is it because you're a glutton for punishment? You know, you just like to be abused? No, it's a desire. It's a longing inside of our hearts that God hardwired into us. It's a longing to be loved. We want to be loved. I don't know if you've ever heard of Glenn Wolfe. I learned this in preparing for this message. It's kind of interesting. Glenn Wolfe, he's dead now, died in 97, but he was 89 years old when he died. And he holds the record for the most number of marriages in the United States. He was married 29 times. That's more than some of y'all are like years old, right? 29 times. And his longest marriage lasted 11 years. His shortest marriage was 19 days. Here's the kicker. He was a Baptist minister. No lie, I'm serious. Now, I'm sure he wasn't pastoring. I hope he wasn't pastoring church during all this, but interesting story. What is it that draws somebody back 29 times? I mean, man, why didn't Glenn just stop after like 4 or maybe 24? You know, why did he keep trying? Why did he keep going after it? Why do most of us keep trying? It's because there's something in us that God hardwired. That's that desire. It's that longing to be loved. It's not just you. You know, you might think, why am I like this? Why do I keep wanting to go back? It's every one of us. There's a longing to be loved. That just the desire for relationships are hardwired in us. This is why we make such a big deal about Better Together groups. Why we're having sign-ups for them. Why we want you to be in a small group, because there's something in us. Maybe you're at that point in your life where you're like, man, I don't trust people. But guess what? There's still something in you, this longing to be loved, this longing to be accepted, this longing to belong somewhere, to someone, to some group. And that's why we make such a big deal out of it, because it's hardwired in us. And it keeps drawing us back over and over again, just like Glenn. Maybe not just like Glenn, but it keeps drawing us back. It's a desire, it's a longing that we have. And there's another longing that we have that's very important, is our longing for purpose. Our longing for purpose. You remember when you were little and you would sit around and you'd dream about what you wanted to be when you grew up, right? I have this little thing that I have very few pieces of memorabilia from my childhood, but I do have one. It's in the shape of a football, and it has little writings. And I think it was something we made in first grade or something. Of course, my handwriting is still the same, so I can't tell if it was first grade or if I was a senior in high school. But I think it was when I was first grade. But it has little pictures, and it has what do you want to be when you grow up? And one of the things I wanted to be was a football player, you know. And now another thing, I've shared this before, another thing I wanted to be when I was growing up was a garbage truck driver or worker, garbage man. I just thought it was cool to see those guys hanging off the back of a truck. I'm like, I'm in. I want that job, you know? And then I found out it wasn't all that it was, you know, kind of stinky job. But anyway, yeah, not as glamorous. But What was it that you wanted to be when you were growing up? Did you want to be a doctor? Did you want to be a lawyer? Did you want to be a professional ball player? I don't know, but all of us, when we're little, we sit around and we dream about what we want to be when we grow up. Think about this with me. Why in the world is a 5-year-old or 6-year-old dreaming about what they want to do in life? You don't have bills, right? You don't have responsibilities. You don't even have the need for a job. But here we are. We're dreaming about what we want to be because there's something wired in us, hardwired by God for purpose. We want our lives to count for something. I mean, come on, we're just still learning the alphabet at 5 and 6. We're learning how to read, and we're thinking about, what do I want to be when I grow up? But the reason we think like that is because of that longing inside of us for purpose. We want our lives to count for something. We want our lives to make a difference. And it's not a mistake that you think that way. It's not a mistake that's a belonging inside of your heart, that you want more. It's not a mistake. It's hardwired by God in us. And then there's one other longing, and it's the longing for meaning. Longing for meaning. See, we long for love, we long for purpose, but we also long for meaning. Here's what I mean by that. We want answers. We want to know, what is life about? What is this all about? Why? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? If you're so good, then why do you allow this to happen? Those are big questions. And we want answers to those questions. And if you've ever experienced, and I'm sure we've all lived long enough that you've experienced some pain, and you go through those painful things and you ask, why? God, why did my parent die, or my child die, or my brother or sister? Why did I experience, why is this happening in life? Why did this thing happen to me? Those are big questions. And sometimes people get afraid of those questions. It's like, because I don't have an answer, we get nervous. Or some people think, it's wrong to question. It's wrong to question God, and it's not wrong. God hardwired us with that ability and with that desire to want to know, what is it that's happened? What is it that's going on? Why did this happen to me? What's the point of life? I don't know if you've ever been there. I have a feeling that many of you have been there, where you've questioned it so much to where you're like, if I don't really get an answer, then what's the point of living, right? I've been there. What's the point of living? That longing for love, that longing for purpose, that longing for meaning, they're all hardwired into us by God. And here, the problem isn't that we have these longings or these desires. The problem is that we seek to fulfill them on our own. God wired us with those things. He wired us with those longings, and it's not a problem to have them. It's when we seek to fulfill them on our own. We ignore God, and we allow those things to drive us or draw us and pull us away from God. We try to satisfy all of these longings that we have and all the answers to the questions that we have without God in the equation. That's where the problem happens. Because those longings in us, that longing for love, outside of God, it pulls us away and it gets us into some bad stuff. That longing for purpose. Man, I want to make something of my life. And if you extract God from the equation, then we end up in a place that we didn't intend to be. Bad places. See, it's that awakening to our longings and understanding those longings that really is the beginning process of coming back to God, coming home. Jesus told a story that is really one of the greatest short stories ever told in all of literature, I think. And it's a story of a lost son. And it doesn't even really matter if you go to church or not, or have ever been and read the Bible. Most people have heard this story. It's the story of the lost son. Some call it the story of the prodigal son, right? It's found in Luke chapter 15, verse 11 through 24. And over the next 5 weeks, we're going to go through this story. It is a powerful story that Jesus told. There's so much meaning in this story. There are so many analogies in this story to our lives. Let's look at it. Luke chapter 15, verse 11 through 24. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he'd spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I'll set out and I'll go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up, went to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate." It's a powerful story. We're going to look at over the next 5 weeks very important things of why Jesus told this story and the connection of this story to our lives and how it works together. Every one of us has the common denominator of these awakenings that take place in us. And that first awakening is that awakening to longing. You know, in the first century, just a little FYI here, first century Middle Eastern culture, if a son asked his father for his inheritance early, this was one of the worst insults that a father could receive. Now, we wouldn't think twice about it in our culture because that's just how we are. We're just a selfish Western culture, right? No? Okay. Your house is different than mine. I mean, come on. We wouldn't even think about that. We think that's normal. You know, my kid's always asking for stuff. They want everything I got. But in that culture, in first century Middle Eastern culture, for a son to ask his father early, meaning before his father was dead, was one of the worst insults that he could receive. Because a son in that culture was expected to wait until his father died before he got the inheritance. And not only that, but his son was really expected to take care of his father in his old age. They didn't have nursing homes back then. They didn't have people they could just, leave them somewhere. Adult daycares. The son took care of the father until he died. And asking for his inheritance early was like saying, "Look, Dad, I don't really care if you live or die. I just want what I want. I just know that there's something more in life, and I want it now." Right? It was a huge offense. I mean, you could just hear the son singing, "You can't always get what you want, Or maybe I just haven't found what I'm looking for. I mean, he's got this longing. He's got this desire in him. He's realizing there's got to be something more to life. And he said, Dad, I really don't care if you're dead or alive. I have this longing, and I need to do something about it. I need to do something about it right now. See, thinking and feeling that there's got to be more to this life, really, it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's actually the way God wired us. There is a God-shaped hole in each and every one of us. There are longings in us that only God can fulfill. Only He can meet those longings. It's not an accident that you have a longing to be loved. It's not an accident that you want your life to count for something, that you want purpose in your life. It's not an accident that you have questions, that you wonder, why does this stuff happen? These aren't accidents. This is this God-shaped hole that's in every one of us. But not everything we desire is good for us. Things like a lasting love is good. Purpose is good. Your need to make sense of things is good. See, the son in Jesus' story was like so many of us. He was convinced that he had to leave his father to find answers and to fulfill those longings. He had to leave home. He had to go somewhere else to fulfill those. And so Jesus said he set off for a distant country. Longings, if we're not careful, longings can lead us to leave. They're intended to draw us closer to God. But if we extract God from the equation, if we're not careful, they can lead us to leave the very place where those longings can be fulfilled, the longing for love, the longing for purpose, the longing for our questions answered, the meaning of life, the meaning of our situations. Longings can lead us, if we're not careful, can lead us to leave home. I'm not talking about just teenagers. I'm not talking about maybe your story that used to be, but maybe you're in a situation right now where there's this longing, and maybe you're even married, maybe you have kids, maybe you're in a situation where you have a good job, but there's something that's saying there must be more. There's got to be more. And if you're not careful, if you extract God from the equation, those longings that you have can lead you to leave. Leave home, leave your jobs, leave your marriage, leave church, leave God. If you extract Him, if you take God out of the equation, that's exactly where it'll lead you. And this story is so important because that son represents each and every one of us. It says there's got to be more. There's something more to life. And if you want those answers, if you want those longings fulfilled, you can't seek fulfillment outside of God, because it'll lead you to a place. See, the story doesn't give us the details of what actually occurred in the distant country, but it does simply say this: the younger son squandered his wealth in wild living. Squandered his wealth in wild living. So our imagination kind of runs wild. What did he do that was so wild that he spent his entire inheritance? How long did it take him to spend his inheritance? Luke 15:14-16 says, after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of the country, who sent him to feed his pigs. And he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. See, those longings that God puts in us, He hardwires us with, are meant to draw us to Him, to bring us close to Him. But if we're not careful, if we extract Him from the situation, we say, you know what, I'm going to do without God. I'm going to take care of this on my own. I'm going to find purpose and meaning in life. I'm going to find my answers. I'm going to find my love in something or someone. But it doesn't involve God. When we do that, those longings lead us to lose it. I mean, I'm sure, I know many of you, I know your stories, and you could stand here on the stage and say, listen, what Randy's saying is so true, and you could tell your story. A longing without God, a longing with God out of the picture, well, it'll lead us to lose it. To lose our marriages, to lose our families, to lose our careers, and in some cases our lives, our hope. This son's longing for love was not satisfied in women or with women. His longing for purpose wasn't found in parties and people. I'm sure he was pretty popular. You know how it is. If you got the bag of pot, if you got the case of beer, if you've got the money, if you got the car, you're the most popular person, right? Till it's all gone. And I'm sure he was pretty popular. But he didn't find purpose in that. But he was searching for it because he was determined. He knew he had to go somewhere else to get it. And his journey left him with more questions than he had answers. Why didn't this turn out like I thought it would? Why am I so lonely and broken and empty? Why did I end up in a place like this? Maybe some of those questions are the same questions you've asked. The story of the lost son is our story. And the reason Jesus told this story is to help each and every one of us find our way home, find our way back to Him. Life's most important question is this: where will you go to satisfy these God-given longings? Where are you going to go? Maybe you're at a place right now where you're looking for that stuff, and God's not a part of the equation. Maybe you're tempted to look for it somewhere else, and you say, man, I've been doing this thing, I've been following Jesus for a long time, and I just, there's got to be more, and there's a temptation to just kind of step out on your own and remove God from the equation. It'll lead you to lose it. It's either going to draw you close to God or it's going to draw you away from Him. I want to invite you this morning to come home.